Welcome back. It's 12:28 and you're listening to Thursday Afternoons with Robyn, and it's my delight now to welcome from the Peter Cowan Writers Centre, Holden Sheppard. Hi.
Hi, Robyn. Thank you so much.
I'll get to your name in just a second. Is that your real name?
It is a pen name, in fact. I've chosen it very deliberately.
All right. Okay, I'm going to ask you about that in just a second, but I'm going to just say a little bit about you. Apart from being a graduate of ECU in creative writing, Holden was awarded a prestigious Art Start grant from the Australian Council for the Arts in 2015. And the following year, he undertook a mentorship through the Australian Society of Authors, developing his debut novel. Now, I don't know whether we're going to hear that, but he's a current committee member of the PCWC in Joondalup, and that's terrific that they've got the young people coming through still, and people who are, well, I'm saying you are young. You're very young. How old are you?
Look, I'm 29.
You're 29.
Hopefully, I still pass as young.
Yeah, I'm sure. But the thing is that there's writers and and they're getting involved in these writing groups. And well done to you for getting on the committee there and perpetuating this. How long have you been involved with it?
I've been on the committee about 3 months.
3 months, but you've been awarded all these things through the Create ECU. This has all happened to you through ECU.
Yeah, I guess it's from developing my skills through ECU, and then I got these. I was able to write well and apply for things and succeed. So that was really exciting.
Fantastic. And a novel? Have you finished a novel or have you started a novel?
I have. I've finished the first. It's in the editing phase.
Oh, God.
It's an endless editing phase.
Yes,
we're on draft 8. Can you believe?
I can. I know how difficult it is, but we don't hear it often enough because you read these terrific authors and you see how prolific they are. But at the beginning, like you are at the beginning, it's you've got to make a name for yourself. You've got to get a publisher. You've got to get someone behind you and all that money.
Yeah, that's right.
So you're editing it yourself, or you've got an editor?
I've had an editor. I've had a fantastic mentor.
With the same one, doing it 8 times?
She did it 3 times. I think, and then she was like, "Look, we're done." It was part of a mentorship through the Australian Society for Authors. So she was phenomenal. She was former commissioning editor at Random House, so she was a big fish to get.
How did you get
work.
that then? Through?
That was through the Australian Society. So I just applied for a mentorship and said, "Look, here's my work.
Wow.
I'm doing young adult. I'm doing fantasy. Who's out there who wants to take it on?" And she took it on.
Are there a lot of people doing fantasy? Is that very competitive at the moment?
It is. In Australia, the market's really different. So a lot of fantasy novels will sell over in the US and the UK and in Europe. Australia, it's a smaller market.
Right.
So that's an interesting discovery. So not a lot of agents and publishers will want to publish fantasy fiction here.
No.
So that's a challenge.
Yeah.
When you live here.
That would be a challenge, absolutely, if that's your, preferred. Is that your preferred genre?
It is. Fantasy and young adult. I dabble in both.
Okay. So what are we going to be hearing today? A little bit of both?
Well, I thought I'd bring both. Good. And that way I can kind of say I'm both. I'm a young adult author and I'm a fantasy author.
Wonderful. So, okay. Do you want to intro your first piece?
I will, yes. So the first piece, we're going to start with the young adult.
Yes.
I think I can call it young adult because the characters are 18.
Yep.
So I feel like that's young
sure.
adult. But it's pretty, it's not really young and teenage. It's very, a little bit serious.
All right. So the inspiration behind this?
The inspiration was actually, it's about an alcoholic guy, an alcoholic teenager, in fact.
Yep.
And
there are a lot of those.
Well, there are. And, so I saw a guy once, I was in line at a pharmacy, right, at a shop.
Yep.
And there's a guy in front of me, he's absolutely off his face.
Yep.
And he turns around to me and he goes, "I drink because," he literally starts explaining to me at random, total stranger.
Wow.
And I thought, and because it was a random stranger and he was off his head, I pretended to be on my phone.
Okay.
And walked away and I never heard the end of that story, but it got me thinking, what was the end of that? What was he going to tell me? Why does he drink?
Yeah.
And you see people going around all the time, you go, "Look, that guy's drunk in the middle of the day." And I thought, what story do they have to tell?
You got on your phone. You didn't stop long enough to hear it.
I know. And I felt bad. So I thought, I'm going to write the story.
Oh, good on you.
So I wrote the story and the part I'm reading here is actually a flashback to, we kind of look at what was happening behind this.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So this story is called The Black Flower. It's available as an ebook for Kindle, iBooks, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, any of those nifty reading devices.
All right, okay.
Or you can grab just a PDF from holdensheppard.com.
Right. Okay, all
so
right.
I shall begin.
The floor is yours. This is Holden Sheppard.
Thank you. I've got to get my Bogan voice on. Yeah. Okay. After Ashley fell pregnant, I decided to sort myself out and get a job. The only good work going was as a labourer with the main roads, but it was out whoop whoop. They were bitumising some old gravel road past Mount Magnet. The money was sick, but sleeping in a donga in Magnet, not so fun. It did make the return to Jordan and to Ashley all the more sweet each month, though. The 5th time I came back from Magnet, she texted me to say she'd be out to tea when I got home. It was a trap. I stumbled into our shitbox flat in Spalding in the dark. I hadn't brushed my teeth because, well, why would I need to? Ashley was meant to be out. Of course, the moment I flicked the light on, there she was, sitting bolt upright on the sofa, arms crossed against her belly. Her eyes flicked to the bottle of Woodstock under my arm, and then my guilty, unshaven face. You said you were going to be out, I said. You said you'd quit drinking 5 months ago. She stood up and stalked over to my side, sniffing the air around my face. How many drinks did you have on the bus home? 5, I said at once. I smiled. It was out of guilt and inebriation. I knew it, she said. I thought I smelled it on your breath last time you came home, but I didn't want to believe it. She paced across the room. Did you even go a single day without a drink when you promised to give it up? Have you been lying to me this whole time? I grinned. I grinned back at her, a sick, unstoppable grin. I felt proud defying her. I went 1 day, I said. The day after I promised I'd quit, I didn't touch a drop. Then the next day, Donnie invited us boys around and, well, you know, I drank every day and you never even noticed. I hid it so well. I can never trust you again. You have a problem, Nick. Admit it, you have a problem. Oh, Ash, you're so fucking lame now. What happened to the girl who used to do body shots and flaming sambucas? I grew up, Nick. Can you please seriously grow up? You're making a big deal out of nothing. Everyone drinks this much. I mean everyone. All the blokes on the job, all my mates here. Everyone drinks this much. That doesn't mean you don't have a problem. That just means you're all fucked. She grabbed her suitcase from the sofa and tried to push past me. What the hell? Where do you think you're going? I'm going to stay with my mum. The mascara was flowing. I need to think things over. What is there to think over? I grabbed her wrist, blocked her path. You're carrying my son, you're not leaving me. Or maybe you've left me with no choice, Nick. You won't take him away from me, I said. He's the only good thing I have ever done. Her mascara is streaking faster now. I actually think you're right. She tries to push past, and instinctively I squeeze her wrist. The bones crunch in her hand. Nick, stop. Nick, that hurts, stop. Rage. Rage erupts from nowhere. I release her wrist and slam both hands into her chest, shoving her hard. She skids across the tiles, slammed against the wall. She barely keeps her feet. Move, she says. I shift from the doorway and she strides through it, suitcase in tow. I'd already taken my first swig of the bourbon before I heard the engine of her XL start up. Ashley ignored my text for 3 days. Her mum wouldn't answer the door when I drove around. And on the 4th day, she sent me a text message. Got rid of it yesterday. Couldn't raise a kid by myself. And I'm not going to raise a kid around a drunk, violent, deadbeat fuck like you if you won't stop drinking. You killed him, Nick. Not me. You killed him. I called her 30 times. No answer. I was drunk at the time, but my heart was still racing. I actually screamed. I cried. I punched a hole in the door and my knuckles bled. He could have been anything. He could have done more than me, been better than me. But he didn't make it because of his screwed up dad. Because of me. Little Daniel. I would have called him Daniel. He was the only flicker of light I had before he got snuffed out. I don't know how it happened, but in my imagination he was swimming around in Ashley's womb, this little happy dude. And then the drugs kicked in, and his little heart stopped, and he floated to the top like a dead fish.
You've been listening to Holden Sheppard, and we'll be back with more right after this. We're still with Holden, and he's a discordant confluence of identities, and I just had to ask him what that meant.
It means I don't fit anywhere, basically.
Here, there, and everywhere.
Pretty much, yeah. You kind of look at me like, do you belong there? Are you a bogan? No, not quite a bogan. You're not quite a geek either. I don't know what you are.
Yeah, and it is interesting because fantasy and young adult, they're about, as far away as you can possibly What piqued your interest in fantasy to begin with? Before we get into this reading of yours, who was it? Was it there a pivotal moment, or for someone who's 29 years of age? And I can go back to certain fantasy people. I've never been into fantasy personally, but there are all these. Do you go back that far? Or is there someone contemporary that?
Look, I'll go back really far.
Yeah.
And you may remember this. So I'm going to go back to when I was like 6 or 7.
Right.
And the things that I found interesting in fantasy was, do you remember Enid Blyton?
Yeah. So my favourite author. Do you think that was fantasy?
Well, there was some, like things like the magic faraway tree and the enchanted wood and those kind of, the idea of these lands moving around.
She was the one who got me into reading.
Yeah. Me too.
Those kind of stories. Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
Who knew?
Who knew?
I know.
The confluence. Discordant confluence of
There
identity.
you go. Who knew that would come up? But yeah, so that's, I was really young and I thought, how interesting that you can create a whole land.
Yes.
And create characters who are not human but who can talk.
Right.
Wonderful.
Okay. So, that's good. That's interesting that you went back that far. Yeah, good. So what about this you're going to share with us?
Yeah, so the Black Flower is probably a little heavy, heavy YA. This is more this is just high fantasy stuff. So this is a story called The Scroll of ISIDOR. Released it back in March this year. And it actually did pretty well in the US and UK, which is really surprising.
Did it?
But that's one of those things with digital publishing. It's not just here in WA, it can go anywhere.
Great.
So this is a high fantasy story. I'm going to just jump in. We're following a deputy chief of a village.
Okay. Do you want to give a little bit of background to where we are now?
Yeah, I probably should. Yes.
Just bring us up to the point.
Yes. Good call. So basically, we're in a world of mages. So people have magical powers. And our main character, Lev, is the deputy chief of a village called Dervine. So he's been contacted by Desma. Desma's heard of these rumblings in the mountains. Something's going on there, and they've gone out to investigate. So they're now deep in this dark cavern. And they're trying to work out, okay, well, what was this noise and who's coming? Because we think it's maybe a foreign army looking to maybe invade or something like that. We're not too sure.
All right.
So scary stuff. No Bogan voice this time. I'll try to ease it out of that.
This is Holden Sheppard.
Lev dismounted, giving Huck a firm slap on the flank. He strode over to the ivy-covered wall, blade aloft, the orb of light still illuminating his path. He held out his other hand and ran his calloused fingers over the ivy. He closed his eyes, feeling the ivy's leaves rustle against his fingers, breathing in the crisp scent. His body stiffened. "What is it?" Desma asked. "This ivy is distressed," Lev said. "You were right." His heart immediately began to pump faster. He would have preferred it to be an archod. Slaying those slimy-skinned beasts was not Lev's idea of sport, but at least he'd had more practice at it. Foreign men arriving unannounced in the mountains? Not something he'd dealt with since the war. Lev traced his fingers along the ivy, first to the right a few metres, then back to where he began, and then a few metres to the left. Desma's Costish sniffed his shoulder and he let it, the mare slobbering on the cuff of his cloak, while he focused completely on feeling the ivy. Then he raised his left hand in a quick motion, made a controlled, sweeping action with his hand in front of the wall. At once the ivy rustled of its own accord, untwisting itself from the rock wall and creeping to the left and right, like a sea parting down its middle. As the greenery moved away, Lev and Desma were left staring at a wide expanse of grey rock, a large crack running from the ground to the high icicle-covered ceiling of the cavern. "Ah," Lev said. "Desma, are you carrying a weapon?" "Well, only my dagger." "Ready it, in case. And stay back." Desma pulled her mare back, withdrawing a short dagger from beneath her cloak. She held it tightly by her waist. Her face was drawn but determined, in the emerald light from the sword. Lev raised his blade and pressed the glowing tip to the centre of the crack in the rock. He breathed slowly, deliberately, absorbing energy from the ivy around him, and then bellowed, "Show yourself!" The green light from the tip of Lev's sword exploded across the surface of the wall, forming a wide arch of green light, and then with a loud pop, the rock disintegrated, collapsing like rain and hissing to the ground as a deluge of sand. At once, a chorus of coughs echoed from the other side of the wall. Lev raised his sword, the glowing tip illuminating a cramped tunnel on the other side. At least 3 bodies became visible as the dust cleared. Some of them held shovels, all of them illuminated by a couple of dim oil lamps. "I am Levin Ruck, Deputy Chief of Dervine. Identify yourself at once." One of the men cleared his throat, but didn't step forward from the gloom, remaining as a shadow. He was bearded and heavy-set. "God's bones, comrade, we're on your side. No need for these shenanigans. The voice was gravelly, laconic, like they ought to be sharing a stein of mead. I said identify yourselves. Fine, fine. The heavyset man brushed off the debris and stepped into the cavern. He had a ruddy face, a drinker, and the thickest eyebrows Lev had ever seen. There were 2 red stripes on the shoulder of his tunic. They indicated military rank, but it wasn't the same system that Flaren used. Captain Pavel Pollock of the Paikford Regiment of the Peteran Land Army, and these are my men, he said, extending a hand and peering into the cavern. He glanced at Desma, and Lev's eyes followed, but she had already concealed her dagger beneath her cloak, though her hand did not leave her side. Well, where's Chief Magnus then? Why's the change of plans? I thought he wanted to meet tomorrow night. Ice hardened in Lev's veins. This was what Magnus knew. But it didn't make any sense. Paikford was the closest village to Dervine as the crow flew, but the mountains usually made links between the 2 shires impossible. They may as well have been separated by an ocean. The ivy rustled, though there was no breeze here. Lev's brain darted for the right answer, and he decided to play along. The chief sent me in his stead and asked me to receive you first. He was trying to think up something intelligent to say. I see you made it through the mountain then. He was trying not to sound amazed at the breakthrough. Pollock folded his arms across his chest, inspecting Lev and Desma. We did. Thanks to you blasting that out last bit of rock. Lower that damn sword, son. Lev obeyed at once. He still couldn't process the situation. The emerald orb of light was still glowing from the tip of his sword, but now that it was lowered, the cavern was dull. Does this mean we get to eat? One of Pollock's men called from the tunnel. Yeah, I want boiled cabbage, called another one. Do you have that in Dervine? I hope it's as good as at home. Our tavern makes a fine roast cabbage, nice and crispy, Desma said, defensive at the assertion that Dervine's meat could be inferior to Peteran's. All right, first things first, Pollock said. He produced a flattened scroll of parchment, the wax seal still intact. Here you go, deputy, straight from the quill of King ISIDOR. As the scroll was pressed into Lev's hand, the hair rose on the back of his neck. He knew the name ISIDOR well. ISIDOR of Peteran, the rebel son of King Rowan. The scribes had taught him of the tale, how Rowan had exiled his own son during the war, for attempting to instigate a coup d'etat in the province of Valence, and how ISIDOR had broken free from his prison in Strada, and now roamed the seas with a band of rogues. He was a known marauder and a known killer. The story flashed through Lev's mind in a fraction of a second. So the exiled rebel ISIDOR was now king of Peteran. There was only one way that could have happened, and it certainly hadn't involved a pleasant chat with his father over some boiled cabbage. The rebel ISIDOR has killed King Rowan. He has taken Peteran. And now he wants to take Dervine.
Holden Sheppard reading from the Scroll of ISIDOR. It's a pretty impressive looking cover on that book. Was that part of your creative talents as well?
It is not. No, I will confess I have no graphic design talents at all. That was done by a professional.
Fantastic.
And she did a great job, didn't she?
It's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Listening to that, where does fantasy morph into sci-fi at some point, do you think? Or are they 2 entirely different and can be completely exclusive genres?
Good question. I think sometimes, some people will call the whole lot speculative fiction, and they'll just say it's all kind of there.
Okay.
Sometimes if you go to Dymocks, everything's under sci-fi.
Okay.
For example.
Right, that's interesting.
Yeah, they do get lumped together because they're all a bit geeky, I think.
Yes.
I think that's the idea.
Okay.
But no, they can be very distinct.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's very high fantasy, medieval, swords and sorcery kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then sci-fi, you can be very... a lot of robots and aliens.
Yes,
and things like that.
and tasers and all the kind of the stuff
Although
that we're experiencing now, which is not so sci-fi anymore.
No, it's kind of real, isn't
it?
But
exactly. So where do you go?
Well,
how do you stay ahead of it? That's what I asked somebody last week that came in and did a sci-fi thing.
Well, yes.
How do you stay ahead of it?
Yeah, I'm not sure you can.
It's interesting.
Everything's been created now, hasn't
it? I know.
Well, that just puts pressure on us to create more.
Oh, there's always something, isn't there?
There's
always something, and something comes along and you think, oh my God, why didn't I think of that? But how does it happen? It's amazing.
Yeah, no.
The intellect and the mind and the potential of mankind.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely amazing.
Sometimes I think the sci-fi stuff is being taken as a blueprint. Someone writes a sci-fi novel and 20 years later someone's done it, kind of following the manual.
It's interesting that at the His Majesty's Theatre now, they're doing a play of 1984.
Yes.
George, I'm tempted to go along because, when he wrote that, 1984 was futuristic. And I mean, it's so cliche now. So
Well,
I'm curious as to the play, you know, or how they're going to make it relevant in today's world.
Well, that's the scary thing, isn't it? Because it's so relevant. I mean, surveillance especially. It's pervasive. It's everywhere.
I know.
But also, there's a lot of people who are quite okay with it, which that's what scares me, I think, a little bit.
Well, if you haven't got anything to hide, you feel as though you're okay with it.
I guess so. But, but then you wonder, well, what are they going to come after next? You know, like
I know.
It's that dystopian feel, isn't it?
But once again, they have to stay ahead of it as well. You know, the Big Brother scenario thing. I just want to touch on one more thing because we have a couple of minutes.
Yeah,
Holden.
for sure.
It's been lovely having you in on my last Thursday show.
Oh, it's been great.
I hope that the Peter Cowan Writers Centre will continue to find a place. I think we're trying to place them on a Friday show. But coming from a small country town like Geraldton, I'm from Kalgoorlie originally.
Cool.
And you know, as long as I can remember, I've been reading, and I was involved in the library. And Enid Blyton was one of my thrills to go along and find the next one. You know, and you from Geraldton, was the library a big place in your life? Or then did you go away to a private school and be nurtured to become a writer? Where did this? Where was the seed sown for you?
Yeah, the seed was sown really early. So I was read to when I was a little kid.
Yeah, me too.
And that just became
and
what I
it's
love.
important. If you're not, you don't grow up to be a reader.
I agree. I think it happens early, and you develop
absolutely.
that love for escaping into something different.
Escaping in the quiet time alone with that escapism.
That's right.
Yeah.
And especially maybe coming from a country town, you do kind of...
You have more in those days. But not so much now because you're technologically...
Well, you're more connected, I think, now.
Yeah, you're more connected.
But there is that sense of... You can see on TV and you can see in literature this massive world and universe beyond where you are, and yet it kind of can feel so far away at the same time.
Yeah.
So I think there's a little bit of yearning for escaping to something bigger and more amazing than where you are.
In a book, it's immediate. Even though
that's right.
It's out there. It's immediate because it's in your hands and you can escape into it.
And it's what you can imagine, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to imagine it, you know, the mountains being 3 times taller than now, well, then
and that's
so be
it, isn't it? With the imagination, you know, we're on television and on the media that we have, everything is so graphic and so, you know, there. But when you read a book, you have to imagine.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that imagination must have been something that was a seed in you becoming a terrific writer and. That you are.
I think, I guess so. I think we spend a lot of time dreaming and imagining what could be.
Yeah.
You know, I think, you know, I'll have an interaction with someone and think, I wonder what would have happened if someone else had to come into the room at that point, or what would happen if
the sliding doors.
You know, what happened if the building falls apart at that moment? I mean, like stupid thoughts, but then you start thinking, that could be a story.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I tell you what, well done, and
thanks so much.
A real delight to meet you and to have you on my final show. And I hope. What would you say about getting involved? I'll let you have the PCWC last word.
Yes, absolutely. Getting involved in the Writers' Centre, for sure. Look, it's been incredible to be involved in the community. I think writers can be really isolated people. You know, we can lock ourselves away in a room and just sit at a laptop and forget the world exists, which can be useful when we want to get something done.
Sure.
But I think it's good as well to kind of reach out and meet other people and get involved. So definitely sign up, become a member of your local writers community. PCWC is great because we're up in Joondalup and we're the only one in the northern suburbs. So it's a great location.
Beautiful location.
And it's beautiful, right next to the lake.
Right next to the lake on this gorgeous campus. And the website, if you want any more information, is pcwc.org.au. Holden Sheppard, thank you very much.
Thanks, Robyn. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.